My father once made a choice that changed my whole life. He didn't yell or threaten. He simply used money to erase me from my own future. Back then, I didn't know it yet. I only knew that the man I loved disappeared, and the family I was born into never tried to stop it. Before I begin, stay with me as I share what happened. If this story reaches your heart, please support the channel in your own way by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with people who matter to you. My name is Brielle. I grew up in a house where love felt like a reward you had to earn. My father, Graham, believed emotions were weaknesses. He valued control, order, and how things looked from the outside. I was quiet, sensitive, and always trying to do the right thing, but it never seemed enough for him. No matter how hard I tried, I felt like I was always one step behind his approval. When I met Caleb, everything felt different. He listened when I spoke. He remembered small details about me. For the first time, I felt chosen. Not tolerated. Chosen. Being with him made me believe that maybe I wasn't broken after all. When he proposed, I truly believed my life was finally beginning. We planned a small wedding. Nothing fancy. Just something honest and full of love. I noticed my father wasn't very involved, but I told myself that was normal. He had never shown much interest in my happiness anyway. I didn't see the warning signs because I didn't expect betrayal from two sides at once. A few days before the wedding, Caleb stopped answering my calls. At first, I thought something was wrong. Then hours turned into a day. A day turned into silence. He never showed up. No note. No explanation. Just gone. The pain wasn't only heartbreak. It was public shame. Relatives whispered. Some looked at me with pity. Others with judgment. My father didn't comfort me. He simply said maybe it wasn't meant to be. His voice was calm, almost relieved. That hurt more than the silence from Caleb. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, wondering what I did wrong. I blamed myself because that's what I had always been taught to do. I didn't know that behind closed doors, decisions had already been made for me. I didn't know my life had been traded away like a business deal. At that moment, I believed I had lost everything. Love, trust, and the little hope I had left. I didn't yet understand that this was only the beginning of the truth, and that the real wound hadn't even been revealed. Growing up, I always felt like I was standing outside my own family, watching them through glass. My father ran our home the way he ran everything else in his life. Strict rules, clear favorites, and no space for feelings. If you fit his idea of success, you were valued. If you didn't, you were ignored. I learned early that I was not the child he wanted. I wasn't loud, confident, or impressive enough. I liked books, quiet mornings, and honest conversations. To my father, those things meant weakness. Whenever I tried to express myself, he would shut me down with a look or a short sentence that made me feel small. Over time, I stopped trying. Family gatherings were the hardest. That's where the comparisons happened openly. That's where my cousin Mallory always shined. She was everything my father admired, polished, obedient, and careful to say the right things at the right time. She dressed perfectly, smiled perfectly, and never questioned authority. When Mallory entered a room, adults leaned in. When I did, they barely noticed. My father praised her openly. He talked about her future, her potential, and how proud the family was of her. I stood there, smiling politely, pretending it didn't hurt. Inside, something slowly cracked. I didn't hate Mallory, but I hated how easily she fit into a world that had no place for me. I tried to earn my worth. I helped around the house, stayed out of trouble, and followed every rule. Still, it was never enough. My father's approval always felt just out of reach, like something I could almost touch but never hold. I told myself that if I just tried harder, one day he would look at me the way he looked at her. As I got older, I realized something painful. My father didn't want to understand me. He wanted to control me. In his eyes, children were not meant to grow into themselves. They were meant to become extensions of his plans. And I didn't fit into those plans at all. That's why Caleb mattered so much to me. He didn't see me as a problem to fix. He saw me as a person. With him, I didn't have to perform or prove my worth. I could just exist, and that felt like freedom. What I didn't understand then was that my family never stopped watching me. They noticed when I finally seemed happy. They noticed when I stopped seeking their approval. And to people who survive on control, that kind of independence feels like a threat. Looking back, I can see how the pieces were already moving long before everything fell apart. I just didn't know I was standing in the middle of something much bigger than myself. Caleb came into my life quietly, almost gently, like he didn't want to scare me away. We met during a time when I had already learned not to expect much from people. I was careful, guarded, and slow to trust. Somehow, he didn't rush me. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, his words felt honest. He asked about my thoughts, not just my plans. He remembered things I mentioned once and never repeated. When I was unsure of myself, he didn't push me to be different. He told me I was enough exactly as I was. That kind of acceptance was new to me, and I held on to it tightly. With Caleb, life felt calm. Not perfect, but safe. We built routines together, small ones that mattered to me. Morning coffee, late-night talks, shared silence. For the first time, I felt like I had a place where I belonged. When he talked about the future, he included me naturally, like there was never any doubt I would be part of it. When he proposed, I cried, not because of the ring, but because I felt chosen. After a lifetime of feeling second best, someone had finally picked me without hesitation. I believed him completely. I trusted him with parts of me I had never shared with anyone else. We didn't plan a big wedding. We wanted something simple and meaningful. No show, no pressure. Just a promise between two people who loved each other. I noticed my father stayed distant when he heard the news. He didn't argue or object. He just went quiet. At the time, I thought that meant acceptance. Now I know it meant calculation. As the wedding date got closer, I felt nervous but hopeful. For once, I wasn't afraid of the future. I believed I was stepping into a life that was mine. I didn't see the signs because I didn't want to. Love can make you blind, especially when you've waited so long to feel it. Then, without warning, everything stopped. Calls went unanswered. Messages stayed unread. At first, I thought something terrible had happened to him. I drove to places he might be. I waited, pacing the floor, telling myself there had to be an explanation. But the explanation never came. The day he was supposed to stand beside me, I stood alone. Guests arrived with confused faces. Whispers filled the room. I felt exposed, like every weakness I had ever hidden was suddenly on display. I kept hoping he would walk in and explain everything. He never did. What hurt the most wasn't just that Caleb was gone. It was that the one person I thought would fight for me didn't even give me the truth. And in that silence, something inside me broke in a way I didn't yet understand. After Caleb disappeared, time lost its shape. Days blended together, and nights felt endless. I replayed every conversation, every look, every promise, trying to find the moment where things went wrong. I wondered if I had asked for too much, trusted too deeply, or loved too honestly. The wedding that never happened became a quiet embarrassment in my family. No one asked how I was really doing. They asked what happened, as if the story was entertainment. Some offered advice I never asked for. Others avoided me completely. It felt like I had failed some unspoken test. My father barely spoke about it. When he did, his words were cold and final. He said things like, "These things happen, and you'll get over it." There was no anger on my behalf. No curiosity about why the man who was supposed to marry his daughter vanished without a word. It was as if he had expected this outcome. I stayed in my room most days, curtains drawn, phone silent. The world felt unsafe. Trust felt foolish. I didn't cry much after the first few days. Instead, there was a heavy numbness that settled in my chest. I went through motions without feeling connected to them. What hurt more than losing Caleb was how alone I felt in my own home. I realized I had no one to lean on. No one who would sit beside me without trying to fix me or judge me. The house felt smaller, colder, like it was pushing me out. I started noticing things I had ignored before. Private conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Strange looks exchanged between relatives. My father leaving the house late at night more than usual. At the time, I thought I was imagining things because of stress. I didn't yet know those small details were clues. One afternoon, weeks later, I overheard raised voices coming from the living room. I wasn't meant to hear them. My name came up, spoken in a way that made my stomach tighten. I stood frozen, listening, my heart pounding so loud I thought they might hear it. That was when pieces began to connect. Words about money, about doing what was best for the family, about how some people were more suitable than others. I didn't hear everything, but I heard enough to know that what happened to me wasn't an accident. The realization didn't bring relief. It brought a deeper kind of pain. Because if what I suspected was true, then my heartbreak wasn't just betrayal by a man I loved. It was betrayal by the people who were supposed to protect me. And once that truth began to surface, I knew my life would never go back to the way it was. The truth came to me slowly, not in one clear sentence, but in broken pieces that cut deeper each time they settled in my mind. After that argument I overheard, I couldn't rest. My body felt tense, like it was bracing for something I didn't want to face but couldn't avoid anymore. A few days later, I heard my aunt talking quietly in the kitchen. She didn't know I was nearby. My father's name came up again. So did Caleb's. And then Mallory's. That was the moment my chest tightened so badly, I had to hold onto the wall to stay standing. I learned that my father had met with Caleb weeks before the wedding. Not to threaten him. Not to argue. But to offer him something. Money. Security. A better future, in his words. My father believed Caleb wasn't good enough for me, but he was good enough for Mallory. She fit the image he wanted tied to our family name. He paid Caleb to leave me. Not just to disappear, but to move on quickly and quietly. And Mallory, who had always smiled at me like a sister, agreed to it. She stepped into my place without hesitation. My pain became her opportunity. When I fully understood what had been done, I didn't scream. I didn't confront anyone. I felt something colder than anger settle inside me. A deep, heavy stillness. The kind that comes when your heart finally accepts that love was never part of the deal. Everything made sense then. My father's calm reaction. His lack of surprise. The way he never asked questions. He already knew the ending. He had written it himself. I realized that my feelings had never mattered to him. I was a problem to be solved, not a daughter to be protected. My happiness had been a small price to pay for control. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I didn't leave a note. I understood that explanations were useless with people who never listened. I needed distance, not closure. I left the house before sunrise. With every mile between me and that place, I felt lighter and emptier at the same time. I wasn't running toward revenge. I was running away from being erased again. I didn't know where life would take me. I only knew I couldn't stay where my worth was measured in money and appearances. I promised myself something as I drove away. I would build a life no one could buy or take from me. That was the moment I stopped being the quiet daughter who waited for approval. I didn't become strong overnight. I became silent. And in that silence, I began to change. Leaving felt unreal at first, like I was watching my own life from a distance. I drove without a clear plan, only a direction away from everything that had hurt me. The first few weeks were the hardest. I stayed in cheap places, took whatever work I could find, and kept my head down. I didn't tell anyone where I was. I needed the silence. I cried at night when no one could see me. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears that came from exhaustion. I mourned the future I thought I was going to have. I mourned the version of myself that believed love would be enough. But every morning, I got up anyway. Even when my body felt heavy, something inside me refused to give up. Slowly, life began to settle into a rhythm. I found a small job that paid just enough. Then another that paid a little more. I learned how to rely on myself in ways I never had before. There was no one to impress, no one to please. For the first time, my choices were my own. Healing didn't happen all at once. Some days I felt strong. Other days, one small memory could break me. I had to unlearn the voice in my head that told me I wasn't enough. That voice sounded a lot like my father. I replaced it with quieter thoughts. Kinder ones. It took time. Years passed. I became someone steady. Not perfect, not extraordinary, just solid. I built a life that felt honest. I made friends who knew nothing about my past and didn't need to. I learned that peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from not needing to fight anymore. Meanwhile, I heard small things about my family through distant relatives. Mallory's marriage wasn't as perfect as everyone expected. Caleb wasn't the man people admired anymore. Those details didn't bring me joy. They just confirmed something I already knew. Choices made for the wrong reasons never stay hidden forever. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't dream about confronting anyone. I focused on becoming someone my past couldn't touch. I stopped needing apologies I would never get. I stopped waiting for accountability from people who avoided mirrors. Then one day a letter arrived. An invitation. My brother's wedding. Seeing my family name written there stirred emotions I thought I had buried. Fear, anger, curiosity, and something unexpected, calm. For the first time, I wasn't scared of facing them. I wasn't looking for validation or explanations. I had already survived the worst part. Whatever waited for me there no longer had power over who I was. I realized something important as I held that invitation. Sometimes the strongest response to betrayal isn't anger. It's showing up whole, when they expected you to stay broken. I thought about that invitation for a long time before answering it. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, to leave the past exactly where it was. But another part of me knew this wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, about proving to myself that I could walk back into that world without losing who I had become. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I booked my travel quietly and chose a simple outfit. Nothing flashy. Nothing that tried to make a statement. I didn't need to impress anyone. I just wanted to be comfortable in my own skin. When I arrived at the wedding, the room felt familiar and strange at the same time. The same faces, older now. The same voices. But I was different. I wasn't searching the room for approval. I wasn't bracing myself for judgment. I was just there. I saw my father first. The shock on his face was immediate. He hadn't expected me to come. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say something, but no words came. He had always been confident, always in control. Seeing that crack was enough. Then I saw Caleb and Mallory. They were standing together, but not close. Their smiles looked practiced. When Caleb noticed me, his face drained of color. Mallory froze. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The past stood between us, heavy and undeniable. I didn't confront them. I didn't raise my voice or demand answers. I simply greeted people politely and moved through the room with calm ease. That seemed to unsettle them more than anger ever could. They watched me the way people watch something they thought was gone forever. At one point, Caleb tried to approach me. He looked nervous, unsure of what to say. I met his eyes briefly, then stepped away. Not out of fear. Out of choice. He no longer had access to me or my emotions. My father finally spoke to me near the end of the evening. He asked how I was, like a stranger making small talk. I told him I was well. Nothing more. He nodded, as if trying to understand how I had become someone he couldn't control anymore. As I left the wedding, I felt no victory, no anger, no sadness. Just closure. They saw me standing on my own, untouched by what they had done. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. The real revenge wasn't my success or their discomfort. It was my peace. And that was something none of them could ever take from me again. After I left the wedding, I didn't rush away. I took a moment outside, breathing in the cool air, letting everything settle. I expected to feel heavy, but instead I felt light. For years, I had carried questions, pain, and memories that weighed me down. Walking away that night, I understood I no longer needed answers from people who never cared to explain. I didn't say goodbye to my father. There was nothing left to say. He had made his choices long ago, and so had I. Seeing him struggle to understand who I had become was enough. I didn't need apologies or regret. I needed distance, and I already had that. I realized that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people who are supposed to love you the most. And healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means refusing to let it define you. On the drive back, I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who waited for approval. The one who believed love had to be earned. I felt compassion for her, not shame. She survived something that could have destroyed her. That mattered. I built my life quietly after that. No dramatic announcements. No need to prove anything. Just honest days, steady work, and relationships built on respect. I chose people who chose me back, without conditions. I don't know what happened to Caleb and Mallory after that night, and I don't wonder. Their story is no longer connected to mine. My father remains who he is. Some people never change. Accepting that brought me more peace than anger ever could. What I learned is simple but hard-earned. You don't win by exposing betrayal. You win by outgrowing it. You don't heal by confronting everyone who hurt you. You heal by protecting your future. Today, when I look back, I don't see a story about loss. I see a story about freedom. I was pushed out of a life that was never meant for me, and in that push, I found myself. And that is the ending I choose to live with.